When firefighter Daniel Hale rushed into a burning home, he expected smoke, heat, and danger, but not a secret buried in the flames. He pulled out a trembling golden retriever, alive but clutching something in its jaws. It wasn't a toy or a bone. It was a half-burned photograph, fragile but full of meaning. That single image would lead Daniel on a path far beyond his duty, a path of loss, memory, and discovery that would change lives forever. The flames roared as Daniel Hale, a seasoned firefighter with years of service etched into the lines of his rugged face, entered the collapsing house. His gear was heavy, his lungs strained, yet he pressed forward. Through the haze, he spotted movement. A golden retriever, trembling, fur singed at the edges, eyes wide with terror. With steady arms, he scooped the animal up and carried it towards safety. Outside, daylight blinded him after the darkness of smoke. The dog shivered in his arms but refused to let go of something it clenched tightly in its mouth. As paramedics checked the dog's burns, Daniel knelt down, brushing soot from his face. He coaxed the retriever gently, speaking in a calm tone. The dog's jaw relaxed just enough, revealing the object it had guarded. A half-burned photograph. The edges curled black from the fire, yet the center showed a woman holding a small boy, their smiles frozen in time. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Why would the dog risk everything for this? When he reached out, the retriever pushed the photo toward him, eyes pleading as though begging for help in ways words never could. Daniel brought the golden retriever back to the fire station, where the animal rested near his boots. The men around him admired the dog's loyalty, yet none understood its persistence. The photograph lay on Daniel's desk, charred but powerful. The retriever, now cleaned, would not take its eyes off it. Daniel stroked its golden fur and whispered, "You've lost someone, haven't you?" The dog leaned closer, nudging the photo again. In that moment, Daniel felt more than responsibility. He felt connection. He decided to call the dog Buddy, for it was clear this bond would not be temporary. Daniel stared at the burned photograph late into the evening. His rugged face, scar on the cheek catching the light, tightened with thought. He had fought many fires, but none had left behind a mystery like this. Buddy rested at his side, golden fur warm against his hand. "Who are they?" Daniel muttered, studying the faint smile of the woman and child. The fire had taken walls and furniture, but perhaps not memories. Something told him this wasn't random. He resolved that if Buddy had saved the photo, then he owed it to find the truth behind it. The next morning, Daniel returned to the ruins of the burned house, Buddy walking faithfully at his side. Ash crunched beneath his boots as he searched for answers. An elderly neighbor, leaning on a cane, approached cautiously. His weathered face softened when he saw the dog. "That retriever? It belonged to the woman who lived here," he explained, voice low with grief. "She had a son once, years ago. Lost track of him after hard times." Daniel felt the weight of the photograph in his hand. The puzzle pieces stirred, but the picture was still incomplete. Daniel left the neighbor with more questions than answers. Buddy padded close beside him, the photo clutched carefully in Daniel's hands. The quiet suburban street seemed different now, haunted by untold stories. He looked down at Buddy, who wagged his tail once as if urging him forward. "All right, boy," Daniel murmured. "Let's see where this takes us." He decided to start with the town's public records. If the woman and her son had lived here, there must be traces of their past. Daylight stretched long shadows across the sidewalk as man and dog walked toward an uncertain truth. The library smelled faintly of dust and paper, a sanctuary of forgotten names. Daniel, still in his grey shirt rolled at the sleeves, leaned over the counter, showing the burned photo to the middle-aged librarian. Her eyes softened with recognition. "I remember her," she whispered. "She came here often, always looking through old files." Buddy sat patiently at Daniel's side, eyes alert, ears twitching as though sensing the weight of the moment. They were given access to archived newspapers. As sunlight filtered through tall windows, Daniel knew they were closer to unraveling the family's hidden story. Stacks of newspapers and files covered the table. Daniel's scarred face was tense, his fingers blackened with dust as he traced names and dates. Buddy lay at his feet, head lifted, watching his every move with quiet loyalty. Then Daniel found it. An article about a custody battle, years old, involving the woman in the photo. The child mentioned was never seen again after being placed in foster care. Daniel felt his heart sink. "So that's it," he whispered. The dog nudged his leg, as though reminding him that answers still waited to be found beyond paper. Late afternoon sunlight painted the library gold. Daniel turned the photo over one more time, and there, faint beneath the char marks, was handwriting. It looked like an address. He held it close to the light, his breath caught. "You were trying to keep this safe," he said softly to Buddy. The golden retriever wagged his tail, eyes glowing with trust. With renewed determination, Daniel packed up the files. This was no longer just an investigation. It was a mission. Together, man and dog walked out of the library, carrying the photo like a fragile key to the past. Daniel drove through winding country roads, the photograph secure in his pocket. Buddy sat in the passenger seat, golden fur catching the sunlight that streamed through the window. The air smelled of pine and dust, a reminder of the distance they traveled from the city's chaos. Daniel glanced at his companion. "If this leads us nowhere, at least we tried," he muttered. Buddy's eyes stayed fixed on him, unwavering, as if to say the journey was far from meaningless. Ahead, the sun lit the horizon, a promise of discovery waiting at the end of the road. The address led Daniel and Buddy to the outskirts of town, where an old farmhouse stood, weathered and forgotten. Its white paint had peeled, and weeds grew wild around the porch. Daniel parked his truck and stepped out, adjusting his soot-stained jacket. Buddy leapt down beside him, nose twitching, ears alert. The burned photograph felt heavier in Daniel's hand as he stared at the house. Something about it carried silence too deep to ignore. "Come on, boy," he said quietly, pushing open the creaking gate. The past waited behind those walls, and daylight revealed its lonely secrets. Daniel's boots creaked against wooden boards as he entered the farmhouse. Dust floated in beams of daylight, piercing through broken shutters. His rugged face tightened, scar along his cheek stark in the glow. Buddy padded ahead, claws clicking softly, tail stiff with caution. The air smelled of mildew and time. In the corner, Daniel noticed a stack of boxes, untouched for years. Buddy sniffed one and barked softly, urging attention. Daniel knelt, brushing dirt away. "What do you see, boy?" he whispered. The silence of the farmhouse seemed to hold its breath, waiting for discovery. On his knees, Daniel pried at loose floorboards. Buddy scratched gently at the same spot, golden fur glowing under the daylight, seeping through the cracks. At last, the wood lifted, revealing a small wooden box. Daniel's hands trembled as he pulled it free, covered in dust and cobwebs. He sat back, breathing heavily. "This has been here a long time," he muttered. Buddy whined softly, leaning close, eyes locked on the box. Daniel brushed off the dirt. Whatever was inside had survived fire, abandonment, and time. The key to the burned photo might finally be within reach. Daniel opened the wooden box carefully, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside lay a bundle of faded letters, tied with brittle string. He untied them, hands rough but gentle. The words told a story of a mother who never stopped searching for her son, even as life tore them apart. Each line was soaked with longing and heartbreak. Daniel's eyes misted as he read, the scar on his cheek tightening with emotion. Buddy rested his head on Daniel's knee, sensing the weight of the moment. In daylight's warmth, the farmhouse seemed to whisper the mother's voice. Among the letters, Daniel found another photograph, untouched by flames this time. It showed the same woman, older, her eyes tired but still holding love, standing in front of the very farmhouse where he now sat. Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't coincidence. This was fate. He held the photo up to the light, his breath unsteady. Buddy wagged his tail, nudging Daniel's arm with encouragement. For the first time since the fire, Daniel felt hope. Maybe the trail wasn't cold. Maybe this family still had roots waiting to be uncovered in the daylight of truth. Daniel spread the letters across the farmhouse table, sunlight highlighting each fragile page. One note mentioned a relative's name and a town miles away. His rugged features tightened as he whispered, "She was still searching." Buddy sat nearby, golden fur glowing, eyes fixed on Daniel as though understanding. The photograph and letters weren't just relics, they were directions. Daniel folded the photo carefully, slipped it into his pocket, and looked at Buddy. "We're not done yet, boy." The retriever wagged his tail, ready. Outside, the wind rustled the tall grass, carrying with it the scent of unfinished stories. The truck rumbled down a long stretch of country road. Daniel's scarred cheek caught the golden light pouring through the windshield. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, determination pushing him forward. Buddy sat in the passenger seat, nose pressed against the window, ears perked at every sound. The letters sat in a folder on the dashboard, like a compass pointing the way. Daniel sighed. If this child survived, he'd be a grown man now. The retriever turned to look at him, eyes warm, almost reassuring. For the first time, Daniel let himself believe in reunion. The trail led Daniel and Buddy to a quiet graveyard outside town. Rows of weathered stones stretched beneath the sunlight. He walked slowly, boots crunching on gravel, holding the old photograph in his hand. Buddy padded beside him, tail lowered, sensing the solemnity. They stopped at one stone, moss-covered but faintly marked with the woman's name. Daniel's chest ached as he traced the letters with his fingertips. "You never gave up," he whispered softly. Buddy sat down silently, golden fur bright against the grey stone, as if paying respect to the woman who had carried love to her last day. As Daniel knelt at the grave, a shadow fell across the stone. He looked up to see a middle-aged woman with auburn hair, kind but cautious eyes, holding flowers in her hands. She paused, studying the firefighter and the dog. "You knew her?" she asked softly. Daniel stood, scar catching the sunlight, and showed her the burned photograph. Her expression shifted from surprise to recognition, lips trembling. Buddy moved closer, sniffing her hand gently, as if sensing kinship. In that instant, Daniel knew this woman might hold the final piece of the story he and Buddy had been chasing. The woman led Daniel to a nearby bench, her voice trembling as she spoke. She revealed that the boy in the photograph had been taken into foster care, but she had traced him years later, only to lose contact again. Daniel listened, rugged face softening, eyes filled with empathy. Buddy rested between them, golden eyes shifting from one to the other, as if absorbing every word. The woman smiled faintly through tears. "She never stopped loving him," she whispered. Daniel nodded, tightening his grip on the photo. Sunlight bathed them in warmth, turning grief into fragile hope. Daniel left the graveyard alongside the auburn-haired woman. The afternoon sun stretched long across the country road. His rugged face, scar catching the light, looked both weary and renewed. Buddy trotted between them, golden fur glowing, tail swaying gently. The woman explained she had once been close to the family, and she still carried fragments of their story. Every word made the burned photograph feel heavier in Daniel's pocket. "If the boy survived," she whispered, "there may still be hope." Daniel nodded silently. For the first time, he felt the journey pulling them closer to resolution. At her farmhouse, the woman invited Daniel in. She carefully pulled out a worn album and placed it on the wooden table. Dust rose as she opened it. Daniel leaned close, scar visible, eyes wide. Buddy sat on the floor, watching intently. The album showed family gatherings, holidays, and, at the center, a boy whose face resembled the child in the burned photograph. Daniel touched the page gently. The woman said, "This was the last time we saw him." Then he vanished into the system. Sunlight poured through the window, illuminating both pain and fragile hope in their eyes. The woman revealed she had tracked the boy to another state, but correspondence stopped years ago. Daniel felt a spark of determination burn again. His rugged jaw tightened, but his eyes softened with resolve. "Then it's not over," he said quietly. Buddy, sensing the shift, nudged Daniel's hand, tail wagging as if encouraging the mission. The woman's gaze carried both sorrow and gratitude. "If anyone can find him, it may be you," she said. Outside, daylight bathed the farmhouse fields, carrying the promise of closure that had eluded this family for decades. That night, Daniel sat with Buddy at his side, the photo album spread open before him. His calloused hands traced each face, each story locked in the faded images. He thought of all the fires he had fought, of lives saved and lost, and realized this search was no less vital. Buddy lay quietly, eyes half closed, trusting him. "We'll keep going," Daniel whispered into the quiet room, voice steady with promise. Outside, the moon gave way to dawn, daylight creeping in as a reminder that the past might finally be reunited with the present. The journey wasn't finished, but Daniel felt changed. Standing outside the farmhouse in the morning sun, he looked down at Buddy, who sat proudly, golden fur shining. Daniel held the burned photograph in one hand, the intact one in the other. Their stories joined. The auburn-haired woman stood nearby, a gentle smile breaking through years of sorrow. Daniel's rugged face softened, scar barely visible under the glow of daylight. "Some fires reveal more than they destroy," he murmured. With Buddy by his side, Daniel knew he had become more than a rescuer. He was now a keeper of lost stories.